Relations Association, it is my privilege to welcome you to the opening ceremonies of the 61st North American Invitational Model United Nations Conference. My name is Invitational, and I have the special privilege of serving as a former NAIMUN USG of Non-Traditionals and the current Chief Executive Officer of the Georgetown International Relations Association, otherwise known as GIRA. Since our founding in 1969, GIRA has expanded our programming to support middle school, high school, and college students alike in developing a nuanced understanding of and a deep passion for international affairs. We are so thrilled to carry out our mission around the world, from right here at NAIMUN in our home base in the district, to our historic partnerships in Asia, our newest partnerships in Nigeria, Latin America, and Europe, and many more locations. NAIMUN is GIRA's flagship high school Model UN conference and one of the world's premier Model UN conferences, where we hope to inspire each one of you to take your studies outside of the classroom and apply them to one of our 42 realistic, unique, and dynamic committees. The work that the executives and secretariat have put in to make this NAIMUN what it is beyond imagination. Their creativity, tenacity, and dedication are the driving forces behind NAIMUN growing to newer heights this year. In the spirit of NAIMUN 61's theme, Commit to More, the Secretariat has built upon NAIMUN's history of excellence through meticulously crafting committee topics, DC experiences, and philanthropy partnerships that reflect GIRA's core values. With this being my 4th year in this organization and my final NAIMUN, actually it's my final Model UN conference ever. It is impossible not to reminisce on my freshman year of college as I was roped in to staff a virtual NAIMUN by friends that I had only met through a computer screen. I was a freshman in 2020, by the way. Even though NAIMUN looked a little different then, I see the same love for international relations here now as I did back then. And throughout the years, I've seen delegates exhibit such imagination and empathy in and outside the committee room, whether it be through innovative crisis arcs or captivating speeches. And as I stand here now as a senior in college, thinking about my time as a director in the NSA my freshman year, I am so proud to see how this conference has blossomed since then. In this NAIMUN, my final NAIMUN, and the organization's 61st NAIMUN, it is clear that this conference has cemented its legacy as a pioneer in its field by pushing the envelope on unique substance and expanding our financial accessibility each year. Above all, though, NAIMUN is a weekend of creating lifelong memories, whether it be with new or old friends, at the Washington Hilton or around DC. And I hope that for each and every one of you, NAIMUN can provide these experiences and more. When I was a freshman in high school and had just begun my Model UN journey, I had no idea that 8 years later, I'd be standing here as the CEO of GIRA. My school couldn't even afford to go to NAIMUN. In fact, I actually almost quit Model UN because of such nerves during my first conference. But I am a firm believer in the fact that you must step outside your comfort zone to experience some of life's most beautiful moments. So this weekend, I encourage you all to take a risk or two. Stand up and speak out in your GA or ECOSOC of like 100+ delegates. Unleash your imagination in a creative crisis note. It can be even something as small as talking to someone you've never spoken to before. This weekend, I urge all of you to step outside your comfort zones for a little bit. Model UN has been something I've cherished so dearly for the last 8 years. I met some of my closest friends and my current roommates while staffing our very first NAIMUN together, and some of my fondest memories of these past 3 years are literally at this very hotel. I hope that this conference will fill your weekend with the same magic that has colored my college experience with. And I hope you leave the Hilton this weekend taking with you not only stacks of Post-it notes and crisis pads, but also with a renewed love for international relations, Model UN, and most importantly, the people beside you. With that, I'd like to introduce the incredibly talented individuals responsible for this conference. But first, we've got a video to share.
At its core, NAIMUN is an education. want you, the delegates of NAIMUN 61, to know that NAIMUN is far from the last stop on your journey. Instead, it's an opportunity to build each of you up as writers, researchers, diplomats, or whatever else you seek to become. But while we ask you all to commit to more at NAIMUN this weekend, never forget the basics of why you're here, or why we all continue to participate in the admittedly bizarre, but endlessly rewarding activity that is Model UN. We ask you to look at your committees and see not just an opportunity to dive deep into a new topic, but to sharpen your writing, speaking, researching, and compromising skills. To take a chance and raise your placard for the very first time, even if, like me, when I started Model UN almost 7 years ago, you're completely and utterly consumed by anxiety. To not just accept an issue as you see it now, but to listen to your fellow delegates and remain open to different points of view. And most importantly, to remember that Model UN is so much more than a simulation of international relations. And if you commit to making the most of it, NAIMUN 61 will be so much more for you than just this one weekend. Now, it is my great honor to welcome our keynote speaker, the Assistant Secretary of State for International Organization Affairs, Michelle Sisson. We are thrilled to welcome Assistant Secretary Sisson for her keynote address, after which she will participate in a moderated question and answer session with NAIMUN 61's Executive Director, Romina Chaturaj. During their conversation, Assistant Secretary Sisson will also take questions from the audience. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Assistant Secretary of State for International Organization Affairs at the U.S. Department of State, Michelle Sisson.
This is a big crowd in a big room. It is so great to see so many Model UNers, distinguished delegates. Really excited to be here with you this evening. And Daniel, thank you for that very kind introduction. A lot of hard work by the Secretariat team. And I want to give a round of applause for them again. When I was coming into the Hilton lobby, you could just feel the energy. You guys have taken over the hotel. Very, very cool. So, as Daniel noted, I am the Assistant Secretary of State for International Organization Affairs, IO. So what does that mean? Well, our work covering international organizations, the UN and other multilateral organizations, we focused at the State Department on defending American interests at the United Nations, working with our partners to tackle all of these global challenges that we're reading about and hearing about on a daily basis. Conflict, food insecurity, human rights violations, and so much more. You will no doubt tackle a number of these pressing challenges, pressing issues in your, 42 events and negotiation simulations during these next few days. So I believe that we all have an abiding interest in working through the United Nations and through multilateral institutions and making them work better. They really do matter for all of our safety, security, and prosperity. No one country can solve these challenges alone. We have got to come together in this multilateral space. So the international system built by the United States and other key partners after World War II is facing these days an unprecedented threat, I would say, from certain member states who are aggressively marketing a new vision for the global order, fueled by authoritarian impulse. And so we work not only in New York at the United Nations headquarters, but through our representation in the other UN capitals, Geneva, Rome, Vienna, Paris, Nairobi, and so forth. So that includes the UN Security Council in New York, the UN General Assembly in New York, the Human Rights Council in Geneva, the International Civil Aviation Organization up in Montreal, Canada, UNESCO, the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization in Paris, the UN Environmental Program in Nairobi, IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna, and then the World Food Program and Food and Agriculture Organization in Rome. All of those are UN capitals, and all of those are the UN venues in which our teams are negotiating, collaborating, cooperating with other member state delegations from all over the world. By the way, I did do a little survey in my own Bureau of International Organization Affairs, and it does turn out that about 40% were model UNers. So you guys are paving the way for some great futures in diplomatic work, I am sure. But it's clear that we are in a trying moment, a very challenging moment in which a number of multilateral institutions, including a number of the UN agencies, fund programs, are under a lot of pressure. But again, while we see, and we are going to be marking the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine next week, of course. Well, we see that this moment is very challenging. We know that the world has been able to come together and meet similarly daunting moments in the past. And again, this UN system was built to tackle the most pressing challenges imaginable. And to me, it's really a strong belief in the intrinsic value and necessity of us coming together in this multilateral diplomacy. It inspires me. I've been doing this 42 years in April. This has been my life's work. This has been much more than a career, because it has taken me to, 14 overseas postings, as well as New York over the past 4 decades. When we look at New York, the UN General Assembly, so we had in September, of course, the high-level week. Our president, President Biden, was there. All leaders have a period in which they speak to the assembly during high-level week. And President Biden reminded us that, and I'm quoting, sovereignty, territorial integrity, human rights, these are the core tenets of the UN Charter, the pillars of peaceful relations among nations, without which we cannot achieve any of our goals. That has not changed, and that must not change, end quote. So a lot of us actually carry around these little copies of the Charter of the United Nations and the Statute of the International Court of Justice, and there's another little booklet that's got the Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as reminders, because we do see certain member states kind of throwing this out the window, invading other countries, in spite of what we all committed to in terms of sovereignty, territorial integrity, human rights. The president also emphasized that the U.S. must lead in this critical moment and join with our partners who share a common vision of the future, where conflicts are resolved peacefully and countries can chart their own course. And so this does mean a commitment to these key shared values, including living up to these founding principles in the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So the U.S. goal is to demonstrate strong leadership throughout the UN system. We are the single largest humanitarian donor in the world, for example. We also make significant contributions to UN peacekeeping operations. And what I would call our affirmative vision of the UN, it also entails embracing the calls for meaningful reform and modernization of the UN system, to make it better, to make it stronger, to make it more resilient. And I think it's also important to underscore, as I stand up here and look at all of you, that these multilateral institutions, these UN bodies, can only conduct their important work and serve the world's most vulnerable citizens if there are committed, thoughtful, talented professionals within them. So I do encourage you all to think about careers, of course, in international diplomacy. So it could be with your own countries, and I realize we have like 16% of you have come from other countries outside of the United States. So whether it's with your own country's foreign service, I'm a US Foreign Service officer, or on the staff of one of the UN agencies or other multilateral institutions, you have obviously a strong interest in foreign affairs, in international relationships. And I can see and I can feel from the energy in the room that you're committed to this, even at this relatively young age. And that does give me a lot of hope for our collective future. And I want to, of course, point out also within the broad field of foreign affairs, there are so many fields of specialization. So I spoke about conflict resolution, economic development, global health security, non-proliferation, many, many, many ways in which to serve in these multilateral institutions or as diplomats for a foreign service. So I do hope that you will, in between all of the fun and all of the simulations, think a bit about the future paths through a diplomatic or UN career. And before we start the Q&A, I wanted to offer maybe a few words of advice, maybe to build on a couple of things that Daniel just said up here. So first, embrace the diversity of thought and perspective and opinions of those around you. It is so much fun to sit across the negotiating table and actually really drill down and try to find that common ground, that mutual understanding. You know, this isn't just for Model UN, it's kind of for life in general, but really working to understand those sitting across the negotiating table is an essential skill. Second, be a great listener. You said it very, very well, Daniel. To me, good diplomats aren't necessarily those who speak first or fastest or loudest. Good diplomats are usually those who can take aboard what's being said, both verbally and pick up body language, find an avenue for progress based on those signals. And sometimes we call this active listening, but really focused on that mutual understanding to seek solutions together collaboratively. Third, of course, seek common ground when possible. It may not always be possible, and you see this in the Security Council sometimes, but when possible, seeking that common ground, because really our most durable work in the multilateral space, in the UN space, is where we can come together to find common ground, and it may be with non-traditional partners, we may be working with cross-regional groupings, creating pathways for future work. So probably the most important advice is have fun these next several days, live in the moment with those who have joined you here for this Model UN experience. Step out of your comfort zone, engage with other delegations, other students from the other 49 states or the many countries who are represented here. And again, I was excited to come here, and I've actually told a couple of our senior leadership over at the State Department at our senior staff meeting this morning, and they're very jealous that I get to be here with you because it is a reminder to us that the future is bright because we have you. I still get up every morning and feel this joy and passion for the work I do. I've been so privileged in my own career to have served all over the world, from Haiti to Togo to Benin to Cameroon to Cote d'Ivoire, India, Pakistan, UAE, Lebanon, Iraq, Sri Lanka, Maldives, New York, of course, and Haiti again. And now working to bring everything that I learned in those decades to bear on really trying to cement mutual understanding and progress on these conflicts that we are facing in the world today and the many other challenges. Thank you so much for having me here this afternoon, and I'm really looking forward to the Q&A.
Executive Director, and I am thrilled to be interviewing Assistant Secretary Sisson. Thank you again for taking the time to be here. It means a lot to our students to hear from somebody as seasoned of a diplomat as you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with my first questions. Delegates, if you have any questions for Assistant Secretary Sisson, there are 2 mics set up. There's one right there, one right there. You're welcome to form a line as the questions come up, and we will call on you in 10 minutes or so. But just to begin, my first question for you is this. You've held several diplomatic roles throughout your career. You served as an ambassador 5 times under multiple presidents and have also served as the Deputy Representative of the United States to the United Nations for several years. What would you say is the most important lesson you have learned as a career diplomat, and what advice do you have for students who are also interested in pursuing a career in foreign affairs? And delegates, if we could keep the volume down a little bit, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Hard to keep the volume down when you've got 3,000 excited Model UNers. So, great question. So, great question. Just, when I think about what's the most important skill set, it's really got to be enjoying people to people, right? Because what is diplomacy? It is connecting with the person sitting across from you. So even if by nature, maybe you're a little bit shy or introverted, or not as extroverted as your neighbor, just remember, when you are a diplomat or when you are in this delegation at the Model UN or the real UN, you are representing your country, and that gives you a lot of pride and a lot of confidence. So I think lesson number 1, make sure that the interaction is a personal interaction. I always like to know a little bit about my fellow diplomats. You know, did they grow up in a city? Did they grow up in the country? Tell me a little bit about your family life, hobbies. Just make a personal connection. Because when the negotiations get heated, it is nice to have that personal connection. Other advice, and I know y'all are in high school, so you may be looking at university, college, languages, international relations, history, all terrific. For those of you who are able, I think internships are great to try out a lot of these roles, and I'm sure many of you are already thinking about this. But for those of you who are from the US, because I know we've got a mix, but this goes for any country really, think about not just what your foreign ministry or your State Department does. Think about what your legislature, your parliament does. Believe me, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee here, our House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee, SFRC, and HVAC, the way they say that up on Capitol Hill, they are the folks on a weekly basis that we are consulting with, briefing, testifying for, and so really think about that piece of diplomacy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that answer. So my second question for you is, as the Deputy Ambassador to the United Nations, or rather when you served as the Deputy Ambassador, one of your primary goals was building global coalitions to counter transnational threats to global peace and security. And you continued this mission in your role at the Department of State. And yet, students continue to feel uncertain about the future of international relations. And in fact, a 2021 NIH study had found that over 75% of youth describe the future as frightening. So my question for you is, what advice do you have for young people who are concerned about the future of our world, and what do you think students can do to instill change?
Yeah, that's a really interesting piece of data, because certainly these headlines that we are seeing every day are daunting. The survey said frightening, daunting. But I am, as I'm sure most of you are, because that's why you're doing MOD with UN, I'm a glass half full optimist. I really do believe that people of goodwill coming together can find solutions. So during my time up in New York as the Deputy Permanent Representative at our U.S. mission to the United Nations, and actually in the role that I fill now as Assistant Secretary for International Organizations, it is all about finding that common ground. So I spoke a moment ago about non-traditional partners. What does that mean? Well, you know, we have these groupings, the G7, the G20, and so forth. But going beyond and looking at other UN member states, other countries, we may not have a particularly close bilateral relationship, but maybe we're going to find common ground on combating fentanyl, right? That's the #1 killer of young people in the country. Maybe we're going to find common ground on combating sexual violence in conflict. Maybe we're going to find common ground on a particular peacekeeping mission's necessity in a far-flung corner. So finding the common ground, what are their priorities, what are our priorities, how can we work together? Doesn't mean we're going to maybe agree on every single aspect of international affairs, but we can definitely find something to work on together and to lift up, again, the world's most vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I'm sure that there are several delegates who feel the same way. So that being said, I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions.
Realizing we can't see you, the lights are so bright, y'all have halos around you.
All right, so I'm seeing a young gentleman on the left here. If you'd like to introduce yourself and then ask your question, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm Tyler. First off, it's such an honor to be able to ask you a question, and I'm just sort of interested from sort of the political strategy approach from it. How do you approach the dichotomy between U.S. foreign affairs, which has often been very interventionist, thinking like Vietnam, Middle East, Ukraine, versus the message of peace and diplomatic collaboration that the UN values?
You know, it's a great question, and it's a focus right now as we look at where do we take the UN for the future. This happens to be the year in which, in September in New York, we'll have what we're going to call the Summit of the Future. We're going to all sign on to a Pact of the Future. So part of that is about sustainable development. Part of that is going to be about emerging technology, but a good portion of it will also be the future of UN peacekeeping, the future of conflict prevention and peace building. For many, many years, the focus, at least on the U.S. side, and we are the major funder, contributor for the UN peacekeeping missions around the world, but we're putting a lot more emphasis on peace building and the conflict prevention piece. And that is dovetailing with our own national focus, Global Fragility Act, and a focus on really looking at the economic and social and other causes, environmental in some cases, of what are the drivers of conflict in these hotspots around the world. Great question.
So now we'll switch over to the other side. If you'd like to introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hello, I am Daniel Tepe, and my question for you is, with all the talk about BRICS and certain alliances that are wanting to move away from the dollar and the dollarization of the world, how is the U.S. reacting to that policy the countries are taking to remove the dollar from their certain economies?
No, thanks for that. I was having trouble hearing a little bit. So the question was about de-dollarization. So I'm going to step back from that a little bit. And I mentioned the focus on sustainable development. So we've all committed as UN member states to drive forward to 2030 and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and lift up health and water and environment and many other priorities by 2030. That's aspirational. That's not all going to be achieved by 2030. But as part of that, and here I'm going to get a little closer to some of the issues that are on your mind. Many member states, many countries around the world are really pushing for a reform of the international financial institutions, an evolution of the multilateral development banks. So as we look at the calendar for this year, building up to the UN General Assembly High-Level Week in September, in April in New York, we will have a summit on financing for development. In May, in Antigua and Barbuda, we will all come together as the UN member states to lift up the priorities of the small island developing states. The next month, in June, we will go to Kigali and talk about the priorities of the landlocked developing countries. Then we had a very UN speak in July, the high-level political forum, which again is going to look at how do we get to achieve those 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And then we're going to wrap all that up together. And it almost sounds like an impossible task. So you've got the access on the financial side, you've got sustainable development, you've got peace building, and you've got the reform of the UN, including the reform of the UN Security Council, which has been a hot topic of conversation for the last couple of years as well. All of that wraps into what we'll be discussing in September. So it is the economic, it is the social, it is the development, it is the political, and the conflict resolution.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. A round of applause. Yes. All right, we will take one more question. The young lady on the left, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your question.
Thank you. My name is Mayla Merhai, and I'm from Wheeler High School, and my question is going to be more directed about the UN and how to get into the UN. So for those who are interested in working with the United Nations, could you explain the application process of getting into the UN? And additionally, as a STEM student, I would also like to explore STEM topics. Is it possible to see foreign affairs jobs that include STEM knowledge? If so, do you have any examples? Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. When I go out and do domestic outreach all over the United States, and I really enjoy doing this, I'm going to be in Iowa City on International Women's Day. If anybody's from Iowa City, I'll see you there. Anybody? No? Nobody's from Iowa? Gosh. Into the U.S. Foreign Affairs agencies, the State Department, but also careers with USAID, which is our bilateral development agency, U.S. Department of Commerce, Foreign Service officers, but also pathways into the United Nations, because even though the UN headquarters is in New York City, Americans, this is interesting, are not always well represented in all of these UN agencies. It's not necessarily a path that as many of our young people decide to look at. Great question on STEM. So yes, believe it, believe me when I say that the health professionals at the World Health Organization, the environmental experts in Nairobi at the UN Environmental Program. There are There are such a variety, UN AIDS, again, health professionals, there are such a variety of UN agencies, funds, and programs, and so many of them are looking for those who haven't done the sort of political science, languages, economy, but with the STEM, science and technology especially. Emerging technologies are a very big topic right now within the UN system. We have a lot of work that's being done at UNESCO in Paris on the ethics of artificial intelligence. We have a lot of work on cyber and the emerging technologies being done at the International Telecommunication Union in Geneva, Switzerland. And then the UN Tech Envoy is headquartered in New York. So you see several parts of the UN working on the emerging technologies and AI. So if you are following the STEM path, there is definitely a place for you at the State Department, at USAID, and as well as the UN.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this year's NAIMUN as well, we have quite a few committees that are focused on STEM-related issues. And I think that's what NAIMUN is all about. That's what Model UN is all about, bridging of different fields with the purpose of finding effective solutions to complicated problems. So, yeah. Okay, and with that, I'd like to end the Q&A session. We have a few tokens of appreciation for you. And if you could get a big round of applause. Invitational Model United Nations. And believe it or not, this is actually my 6th NAIMUN. I was a delegate for 3 years in high school and have staffed the conference every year since becoming a student at Georgetown University. And I can wholeheartedly say that NAIMUN is a one-of-a-kind conference that can truly be life-changing if you let it be. And I know that for a lot of you that may seem like an exaggeration, but NAIMUN is not just a Model United Nations conference. It is a chance to meet peers from around the world and practice skills you may not get to in a classroom setting. The research, collaboration, and public speaking skills that you develop both inside and outside of committee often translate to invaluable life skills. And so delegates, I urge you to take advantage of the opportunities and resources around you here at NAIMUN and commit to taking an extra step in committee as well. And quite frankly, taking the extra step can come in many forms. And whether that means raising your placard to speak even if you feel a little nervous, or asking questions about a topic that nobody else is asking, I promise you will take away so much more from this weekend if you treat NAIMUN as more than a competition. And perhaps most importantly, I promise you that if you take the time to truly understand the topics you're researching and discussing in committee and give them the respect and attention they deserve, you will leave NAIMUN with so much more than a gavel. You will leave with the knowledge and the tools to think critically about the world around you. And speaking of taking the extra step, I would like to take this moment to introduce the winners of our annual essay and video contest. And I just want to say our team this year is thrilled to receive so many submissions for both competitions. We know that many of you are busy with schoolwork and other extracurriculars, so we want to thank all participants for taking the time to place, we have Elisa Mudaliar from Woodward Academy. Beginning of the End of the World, a look into the climate crisis. And in second place, we have Sophia Nava from John F. Kennedy. For their case study on refugee protection and integration programs. And for our video contest, in first place, we have Angel Sanchez from the Soltero B. Cabahoo Forum for Literacy for their international relations themed cover of Love the Way You Lie by Rihanna. And in second place, we have Mariana Padilla from Eaton School, Mexico. For their video titled and NAIMUN, a parody of California and Me by Lebanon. So congratulations to the winners, and thank you to everyone who participated in this year's contest. You're welcome to pick up a free piece of merchandise at our merch desk as your reward. Alright, and just to touch briefly on what's new at NAIMUN LXI. So this year's NAIMUN is our largest yet. We are welcoming over 3,300 delegates today in this group from over 20 countries. We have almost 270 Georgetown University student staffers who will be overseeing 42 distinct educational committees. And some of our committees will be hearing from guest speakers like ambassadors and activists and foreign service officers. And in addition to that, delegations will also have the chance to tour embassies, the Pentagon, the White House. So in short, our secretariat here has worked tirelessly for the past 11 months to make this NAIMUN an incredible experience for you all. And that being said, I want to take a moment to address our secretariat members on stage and thank you all for your incredible work. I'm so proud of you and I can't wait to see you shine this weekend. And now I'd like to take a moment to talk about NAIMUN LXI's philanthropic endeavors. Every year, NAIMUN partners with a charitable organization to contribute an ambitious 5-figure donation to their efforts. And this year, we are proud to be partnering with Asylum Works, a local medium-sized nonprofit organization that strives to empower asylum seekers and other forced migrants to rebuild their lives safely and with dignity. And we hope that our partnership with Asylum Works encourages delegates to apply what they learn outside of their committees, in their committees, by highlighting the issues faced by communities right here in DC, and exposing delegates to the work that is happening locally to address them. So with that being said, I'd like to show you a short video to learn more about their work.
My name is Alana.
Hi, my name is Deepika.
My name is Amira.
I am Allison.
My name is Awal.
I am Lara.
Imagine with us a long, dark, winding staircase.
The twists and turns are confusing and disorienting.
There is no railing, so you're always worried you might fall off the stairs. This is the U.S. immigration system.
Asylum Works was created so that individuals and families seeking safety do not have to climb the stairs alone.
No one should climb the stairs alone.
Asylum workers can help in many ways.
For example, we can help you meet a doctor. We can teach you how to get a job.
We can help you meet other people who know how you feel because they're climbing the stairs too. We offer support, encouragement, and a shoulder to cry on. And if we see a client and it looks like they might fall off the stairs, we reach out to steady them so they can continue their climb to the top. Together with community partners, Asylum Works is building a scaffolding around the stairs that improves the lives of the individuals and families we serve so they can rebuild their lives safely and with dignity.
Some time this weekend to learn more about Asylum Works and contribute spare change or an extra $1 to support the great work that they do. And now I'd like to invite my co-executive
Are there any points or